After my parents made me clean up the backyard while everyone else celebrated my sister's promotion, they said, "At least you're good for something." I was covered in mud when my sister laughed and said, "Don't forget the dog poop." That's when I decided. I'm a 29 female now. I was 27 when this happened. I grew up in a middle-class suburb of Raleigh, North Carolina, in a 3-bedroom house with a cracked driveway and a stubborn oak tree that shed all over the yard every spring. My parents, Celeste and Wallace, were your classic image-focused Southern parents. Church every Sunday, HOA committee meetings, family barbecues where we were expected to smile like everything was perfect. We were 3 kids, Bianca, Milo, and me. Bianca is the oldest at 32 now. Milo is the youngest at 24. And I'm the one in the middle, always trying to keep the peace, always trying to earn a little recognition and a sliver of appreciation. Bianca was always the one. The honor roll student, the ballet prodigy, the girl who won homecoming queen and interned with a congresswoman in college. You'd think she discovered fire based on the way my parents talked about her. She's always been a sharp, calculating, painfully polished kind of person. One of those people who speak in a soft voice that somehow still sounds like a command. I was different. Not rebellious, just quieter. I liked books and drawing. I used to teach myself how to fix things around the house when they broke. My dad called me the little mechanic when I was 12 because I repaired a broken garbage disposal once. But that nickname didn't last long. By the time I was a teenager, any praise I got felt like an accident. Or worse, a consolation prize. Bianca went to Duke on a scholarship. I went to UNC Greensboro for a teaching degree. My parents nodded when I told them, then quickly pivoted to talking about Bianca's internship in DC. Fast forward a few years. I'm working as a substitute teacher, trying to get my foot in the door, living on ramen and gas station coffee. Bianca calls home to say she got promoted to some regional something or other at her company in Charlotte. Suddenly, there's talk of a backyard party. I was home that weekend, visiting during a school break to save money on food and utilities. My roommate had gone back to her parents' place in Asheville, and I figured a few quiet days in my childhood bedroom might be a nice reset. Nope. The morning of the party, I woke up to the sound of pots banging in the kitchen and the smell of overcooked sausage. It was 7 a.m. I came downstairs in my pajama pants, rubbing my eyes, and Mom barely looked up. "You need to get started in the backyard. The storm last night left a mess." "What about Milo?" I asked. "He's going with your father to pick up the food and tables," she said, rinsing a dish. "Bianca's flying in. You know she can't do any heavy lifting with her wrist." Her wrist? She'd sprained it months ago. It had healed. Still, I didn't argue. That was always the dynamic. I didn't push back. I just helped. Because if I didn't, I'd be guilt or ignored, and both of those hurt in different ways. I put on old jeans, pulled my hair back, and headed out with gloves and a rake. The yard was worse than I thought. There were downed branches everywhere, piles of wet leaves, and Jasper, the golden retriever, had torn up an entire flower bed. Not to mention, he'd left his usual trail of poop in the far corner where no one ever bothered to clean unless guests were coming. The wheelbarrow had a flat tire. The hose nozzle was cracked. Every job required 5 extra steps. But I worked for hours anyway. At some point around noon, I came inside to get a glass of water. My hands were blistered and raw, my face red from the sun. I walked past the kitchen where Mom and Bianca were decorating cupcakes like it was an episode of the Great British Bake Off. Bianca looked me up and down and smirked. "Don't forget the dog poop," she said, taking a sip of her mimosa. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I looked at my mom, hoping for some sort of defense. She didn't even acknowledge me. I went back outside, stood there for a second, staring at the mess I still hadn't finished, and something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally stopped pretending it wasn't broken. An hour later, I was dragging trash bags full of clippings to the curb when my dad walked up with Milo, both holding fast food cups and laughing about something. He looked around and gave a single nod. "At least you're good for something." Then he kept walking. That was it. That was the moment. I don't even remember if I finished the yard. I think I did. I must have. I showered, threw on a simple dress, and sat inside for the rest of the party like a ghost. People I hadn't seen in years smiled at Bianca, toasted her success, and told her how proud they were. Not one person said a word to me. Not even when I walked to the kitchen to grab a soda and passed my parents talking to Bianca about how maybe she should start looking into buying property. No one even looked at me. Later that night, as the last car pulled out of the driveway, my mom came into my room and asked why I hadn't joined in on the toast. I didn't feel like it, I said. She sighed. You always find a way to ruin things. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just packed a bag and left before sunrise. No note. No goodbye. I drove back to Greensboro, and I didn't return their calls for 3 weeks. And they stopped calling. I didn't go back for months. When my lease ended that summer, I found a small one-bedroom apartment in Durham, closer to where I'd accepted a long-term substitute role at a Title I elementary school. The pay wasn't great, but the principal, Ms. Odom, said she liked the way I spoke to the kids like they were people, not problems. That meant something. I settled into a routine. Early mornings. Lesson plans. Free lunch from the cafeteria. Late nights laminating flashcards and grading writing prompts on paper so cheap it tore under pencil erasers. It was exhausting, underpaid work, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt seen. The kids noticed things no one else had. One little girl, Jordan, once told me I reminded her of a nice auntie who smells like crayons. It was the most sincere compliment I think I've ever received. No one in my family knew I'd moved. No one asked. Around Thanksgiving, Milo reached out. Hey, he texted. Are you coming home? I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Then wrote back, why? A minute passed. Then, Dad bought a deep fryer. I almost laughed. Leave it to Milo to try to fix years of resentment with fried turkey. I didn't reply. Christmas was quieter. I spent it with my roommate's cousin's family. We watched bad movies and drank boxed wine, and someone's aunt made lasagna instead of ham. It was different. But I wasn't alone. Then in March, I got a voicemail from Milo. I remember the exact moment. I was in the parking lot of a grocery store, waiting for my debit card to undecline after transferring $10 from my savings. He sounded different. Rushed. Hey, just wanted to let you know, Dad had a heart attack this morning. He's okay. At WakeMed. Mom's freaking out. Bianca's on a flight. I know you're probably not coming, but figured you should know. I didn't cry. I didn't even call back. I just sat in my car for a long time, watching a man unload cases of soda into the back of a minivan. My phone screen dimmed. The world went on. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Real envelope. My dad's handwriting on the front. I almost didn't open it. Inside were 3 pages, written on lined paper in a shaky, uneven scrawl. He talked about the hospital. About how scared he'd been. He mentioned how he kept thinking about Jasper, who had passed away the summer before, and how weird it was not to hear him barking when they pulled back into the driveway after his discharge. Then, about halfway through, he shifted gears. He wrote about me. He mentioned the time I stayed up all night making Milo's science fair poster in 5th grade. The time I fixed the dryer when the repair guy canceled. How I once volunteered to paint the shed by myself at 14 while everyone else went to the beach. I never said thank you, he wrote. I should have. It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was close. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it up, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it in my nightstand. I didn't call. Instead, I wrote him back. A full letter. 5 pages. I told him everything. How it felt to be invisible. How painful it was to be useful but never valued. I described the party, how his words sat with me like gravel in my chest. I didn't hold back. But I wasn't cruel. I was just honest. A week later, I got another letter. This one had only 1 sentence, I see you now. That one made me cry. But Bianca never wrote. Never called. Never asked. She posted a photo on Instagram of her and Dad in his hospital gown, her caption saying something about being grateful for strong hearts and strong men. I couldn't even be mad. It felt expected. That spring, I started dating Felix. We met when he was fixing the ceiling tiles in the teacher's lounge. He was quiet, steady, thoughtful in a way that made you feel like the room calmed down when he walked in. We talked while I graded papers. He brought me coffee once after I had a bad morning and didn't ask for anything in return. He never made me feel like I had to prove anything. I wasn't competing with anyone in his world. I told him about my family slowly, in pieces. He never judged. Just listened. In June, Milo texted again. Mom wants to know if you're coming for Dad's birthday. I stared at the screen. Then replied, is Bianca going? She's hosting it. Of course. I'll pass. But a few days later, I got another letter. From Mom. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. It was shorter than Dad's. Less emotional. But it was something. She wrote that she missed me. That the house was too quiet without all 3 kids. That Dad still talked about the letter I sent him. And, to her credit, she admitted she hadn't always been fair to me. I think I spent too much time worrying about who needed the most help, she wrote. And not enough time noticing who helped without asking. It didn't fix everything. But it mattered. I didn't go to the birthday party. But I sent a card. A real one. It had a stupid pun about grilling and old age. Felix laughed when he saw it. Baby steps, he said. That summer, Milo drove out to see me. We had lunch. Walked around Duke Gardens. Talked about Jasper, about Bianca, about childhood memories that now seemed so different in the rearview mirror. He confessed that he always thought I was the strongest one. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We took a photo together near the fountain. I didn't post it. But I saved it. A few weeks later, I got a text from Bianca. No hi. No pleasantries. Just, Mom says you're mad. Get over it. I didn't reply. I stared at that text from Bianca for a long time. Mom says you're mad. Get over it. 6 words. Like a shrug typed out loud. I didn't respond. Not out of pride. Just. I didn't have the energy to explain to someone who had spent her whole life stepping over me why I'd finally chosen to stop laying down like a welcome mat. And deep down, I knew she didn't care about the explanation anyway. Felix and I were sitting on the couch when I showed it to him. He read it. Didn't say anything right away. Then he handed the phone back and said, she sounds exhausting. I think that was the first time someone had ever reacted like that. Not trying to mediate, not offering excuses like, that's just how some sisters are, or she probably didn't mean it. He didn't make me second guess myself. He just acknowledged that yes, it was as awful as it felt. And yes, it was okay to feel that way. I didn't hear from Bianca again for nearly 9 months. Life went on. Teaching became a little easier. I finally got hired full-time that fall with my own classroom. It wasn't fancy, a windowless room with flickering lights and a door that stuck in the winter, but it was mine. The kids painted a banner that said Ms. Evers Rocks, and I hung it proudly above the whiteboard, even though Rocks was spelled with a backward K. Felix and I moved in together. A small rental house in East Durham, not far from the school. We painted the living room mint green, even though the landlord said beige was preferred. He never noticed. We adopted a rescue cat that only had 3 legs. Named him Crouton. He's a jerk, but he's ours. Milo kept in touch. More often than before. He called sometimes just to vent about work or to send me photos of his latest attempts at sourdough. One night, he called tipsy and told me, you were always the parent, you know that? Like, for both of us. It took me a few minutes to respond to that. One Saturday afternoon in late January, almost a year after the party, I got a call from my mom. I was tempted to let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. She was quiet. Awkward. Not her usual polished, overly sweet tone. More like someone fumbling around a dark room looking for a light switch. I wanted to say thank you, she said. I blinked. For what? For the letter. For everything. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Your father kept it, she added. He reads it sometimes. Keep it in the nightstand. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know how I felt about that. Flattered? Guilty? Sad? I'm sorry we didn't see you, she said. I wish I could say we were just busy or distracted, but, truthfully, I think we took advantage. We just thought you'd always be there. Quiet. Helpful. Not needing anything. It wasn't a grand apology. But it was real. It was something. I told her I appreciated the call. We didn't talk long. I didn't jump at the chance to reconnect. But I didn't hang up angry, either. Weeks passed. And then, out of the blue, Bianca called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Said she was coming to Durham for a conference. Asked if I wanted to meet up. Her tone was brisk, like it was a business appointment. Felix raised an eyebrow when I told him. You gonna go? I don't know. But I did know. I was curious. And I was tired of feeling like I was avoiding ghosts in my own life. So I said yes. We met at a trendy coffee shop downtown, the kind with turmeric lattes and oat milk everything. She looked exactly the same, immaculate hair, designer coat, perfectly manicured nails tapping her phone screen as I walked in. She stood to hug me. I offered a quick, awkward one-arm hug back. We sat. Ordered drinks. Made small talk. Then she got to it. Mom says you've been really distant. I took a breath. Do you really not understand why? She blinked, thrown off. I mean, I know we had that weird moment at my party, but it wasn't just your party, Bianca. It's always been this way. I looked her in the eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just laid it all out, every birthday she monopolized, every time my achievements were brushed aside, the constant way I was expected to serve, to support, to smile in the background while she was praised for breathing. She didn't interrupt. Not once. When I finally stopped talking, she sat back in her chair, chewing the inside of her cheek like she was trying to process it all. I didn't realize, she said softly. I guess I just thought, you were fine. That was the problem, I replied. I wasn't fine. I was just quiet. You confused that for contentment. She nodded slowly. Then, surprisingly, she said, I'm sorry. I didn't expect that. It didn't fix everything. It didn't wipe away years of imbalance and passive dismissal. But it felt like someone finally cracked open a window in a room that had been stuffy for years. We didn't become best friends. We didn't start texting daily. But there was a shift. A small one. Something real. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter. That night, Felix asked me how it went. It was weird, I said. But good. I think. He smiled. You finally said your piece. I did. And I wasn't sorry. The weeks after that conversation with Bianca were strange. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just weird. There wasn't any sudden closeness between us. No floodgates of sisterly bonding. But for the first time in my life, there was space between us that didn't feel like a chasm. It was more like a quiet road. Still long, but walkable. A week after the coffee shop, she sent me an article about trauma and middle children. She didn't say anything, just the link. I didn't respond. But I read it. Twice. And I think that was her way of saying, I'm trying. Or maybe, I'm thinking about you for once. Either way, I didn't delete it. Around that time, I got a call from the school principal. Ms. Evers, she said, there's a permanent opening for 3rd grade next fall. I know your contract was through June, but we'd love to keep you on. I said yes before she finished the sentence. Felix and I celebrated that night. Nothing fancy, just pizza and ice cream from the corner shop. We sat on the porch under a busted string of fairy lights we'd hung up but never fixed. I told him I felt like, for once, I was building something that couldn't be taken away from me. You are, he said. I believed him. A few days later, I got another letter. From Dad again. His handwriting looked worse. Shaky, unsure. But the words were clear. He wrote about being in cardiac rehab. About how the doctors said he was lucky. About how he was trying to spend more time on the stuff that matters. Then he wrote, I want to see you, if you'll let me. I sat with that letter for a long time. I turned it over in my hands like it might change its meaning. I didn't say yes right away. I talked to Felix. To Milo. I even drafted a response 3 times before finally sending a short text, "I'll come by Sunday afternoon." It had been almost 2 years since I walked out of that house. Driving down that familiar road made my stomach clench. Everything looked smaller. The trees were thinner. The yard wasn't as big. The street, which had always felt like a stage where we performed our perfect family act, looked tired. Dad met me at the door. He looked older. Paler. Thinner. But his eyes lit up when he saw me. He hugged me tightly, then stepped back. "Thank you," he said. Just those 2 words. We sat in the living room. Mom brought us iced tea, and then awkwardly disappeared to the kitchen. I noticed the photo wall was still filled with Bianca, graduations, galas, business awards. But on a small side table, tucked behind a lamp, there was a photo I didn't recognize. It was me, standing in front of my classroom. The banner with the backward K was visible. He must have pulled it from Facebook or maybe asked Milo for it. Either way, it was there. Not in the center. But not hidden either. We talked about small things at first. Work. Milo. Jasper. Then the conversation wandered into heavier territory. "I think I failed in a lot of ways," he said. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. "I don't expect forgiveness," he added. "But I do want to try again. To know you now. Not as my helper. Not as Bianca's sister. Just as you." I looked at him. This man who had once dismissed me with a single sentence. Who had let me become the family's mule in exchange for scraps of approval. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger looking at him. I just felt tired. And ready to let some things go. We didn't solve decades in one afternoon. But we talked. We laughed a little. And when I left, he said, "Come back when you can. No pressure." There was a softness in his voice I didn't remember from my childhood. As I got in the car, Mom came outside. "Do you want to take some leftovers?" she asked. I almost said no out of instinct. But I didn't. "Sure." She handed me a foil-wrapped container and said, "We're proud of you." She didn't meet my eyes when she said it, but I saw the effort it took her just to say it out loud. That night, back at home, Felix was grading some repair estimates when I walked in. "Well?" he asked. "It was weird," I said. "But not bad. You want to go back?" "Yeah. Not every week or anything. But, yeah." Then I pulled out the foil-wrapped leftovers and grinned. "Also, I got lasagna." He laughed. "See? Emotional breakthrough and dinner." I smiled. It wasn't perfect. But it was something. Time passed, as it always does. After that visit, I started going back every couple of months. Not out of guilt. Not to please them. Just because I wanted to. The dynamic had shifted. I had boundaries now. And more importantly, I had a life outside of them. One that didn't revolve around approval or appearances. My parents were still my parents. They hadn't changed overnight, but there was an effort now. My dad called sometimes, not just to talk about Bianca, but to ask how my kids at school were doing. Mom sent me recipes she thought I might like. She even mailed me a birthday card on time. With a handwritten message. That had never happened before. It was clumsy and late, but I'll take imperfect growth over perfect neglect. As for Bianca? We stayed in orbit. Distant but not entirely disconnected. She sent me the occasional link, the occasional forwarded article. She never brought up the past again. Never acknowledged the depth of what we'd talked about. But I didn't need her to. Because over the next year, something unexpected happened. Bianca started to lose her grip on the pedestal. It started subtly, at a 4th of July barbecue, where one of my mom's friends asked if I was the teacher daughter and said she'd heard wonderful things about my reading program from her niece. My mom smiled, clearly surprised but proud. Bianca had been mid-story about a work trip and blinked as the attention shifted. Then there was the church Christmas drive. My school had partnered with a local food bank, and when my mom brought a flyer to their community board, it somehow got shared around the whole congregation. People started donating in my name. Asking about the school. A few even volunteered. Bianca was gracious, outwardly. But I could tell it was bugging her. She was used to being the focal point. And now, well, people were noticing someone else. Then came the turning point. The following summer, the local paper did a spotlight piece on underserved schools and highlighted our literacy project. It included a photo of me with a few of my students. The headline read, "A teacher who builds more than classrooms, meet the woman changing reading rates in Durham." My principal emailed it to everyone. My colleagues printed it and stuck it on the breakroom fridge. I didn't think much of it until my mom called, practically breathless. "It's in the fridge," she said. "I made 2 copies, one for us and one for your Aunt Marcia. She's telling everyone at the salon." It was sweet, if slightly excessive. But the kicker came a week later when my mom organized a family dinner. Nothing fancy. Just one of those casual, semi-regular things we'd started doing again. Bianca was there. Hair straightened, nails perfect, that signature calm composure like nothing could touch her. At one point during dinner, Mom turned to me and said, "I showed your article to Pastor Riggs. He said he might ask you to speak at the community banquet this fall." Bianca's fork froze midair. She smiled. A little too tightly. "That's great," she said. "Very admirable." It was subtle. But I saw it. The flicker. That rare, precious crack in her armor. Milo, bless him, raised his glass. "To our sister," he said. "The one who actually helps people." Everyone laughed. Even my dad. My mom gave him a mild glare, but she laughed, too. Bianca didn't. She sipped her wine. Said nothing. And for the first time in my life, I felt it. Not victory. Not cruelty. Just quiet satisfaction. I hadn't torn her down. I hadn't shouted or begged or demanded justice. I had simply removed myself from the game and built a better one. They had no choice but to see me now. And whether or not she ever truly understood the damage she caused, Bianca had to live in a world where I was no longer her shadow. No longer the one covered in mud and dog poop while she toasted champagne. I was respected. I was happy. I was seen. And I did it all without changing who I was. Without becoming her.